you're noticing I'm wearing a hat. And it's in honour of a wonderful booktuber called Travis. Travis Bookshelf. And I've got the link below. He tagged me on a very long tag, Trav. 19 questions. And the 20th part is I've got to tag 4 others. And it's quite a old one, this. 7 years at least. And it's called I Dare You. So Travis, this is in honour of yourself, good sir. And thank you. Go and visit Trav. He's got a fantastic site. And if you don't mind me saying, Travis, one of the best accents on YouTube. My accent has been called Shakespearean at times. Probably Caliban, but yours is very good. Anyway, there are a shed load of questions. And although I'm trying to look at the camera, there, the questions are over here. So if I look away, you'll know why. So question 1. What book has been on your shelf the longest? This one, in 2 countries. I had this in the UK. Didn't bring this one with me. I found this more recently. The colour. What a colour. And it's just a fantastic book. I'm fascinated by language and how a lot is falling out of use. The richness, the depth of sayings that I remember, it might have been just a British thing, but I remember growing up in the 60s and 70s hearing some of these great sayings. So giving up the ghost is still current, but more fire in the bedstraw, haven't heard of that, but it means more mischief brewing, a relic of the time when straw was used for beds. Well, obviously that's why. No smoke without fire. We still got that one. Fire eaters. I don't think that's current. It means those ready to quarrel with anyone. I've known few people like that. So this one, I've had it for a long time. 2. What is your current read, last read, and the book you'll read next? Oh dear. Right. So if you're new, this will seem a bit odd. I've got 19 books here, and I read them in succession. A little page here, perhaps a paragraph there, then go on to another book and a page, and so on. So, all quite on the Western Front. Then I'll read Our Man and Havana. I'll carry on reading the Iliad, and then I'll go on to Frankenstein, and then repeat. And there's a load of other books here. I've got to be careful I don't knock them over. So, effectively, they're all my last, the current one, and the one in the future, if that makes sense. 3. What book did everyone like, but you hated? So yesterday I went out and got this. I was, how old was I? 13 when Star Wars came out. And I remember as a young boy that ship coming overhead. Oh, wow. And the music, of course. So I got into Star Wars. I think it was just after that, probably just before I joined the Navy. I joined the Navy at 16. Someone gave me a copy of Dune, and I couldn't get into it. I now know that it influenced Star Wars quite a lot, especially with the sandcrawlers and stuff. There's something about this book. I like the David Lynch film, and the Denis Villeneuve ones now are really good. But there's something about this that I've read before and I have always stalled. I've never got into it. What has changed, I think, is the fact doing BookTube has altered the way I do read, so I'm going to give it a go. But more importantly, playing some board games about Dune. And there's a one from the 70s, it's just fantastic. So I understand now it's like Game of Thrones in space. But better because it came first. 4. What book do you keep telling yourself you'll read but you probably won't? Yeah, I want to read this. I'm going to do some episodes on it. But whether I finish it or not, I don't know. Because it's big. There you go. History of the Russian Revolution by Leon Trotsky. In fact, what's good about it is that it's actually written by somebody who was there. And Leon was involved in the army, the Red Army. He really put it together. He was so integral to the civil war that happened after the third revolution. There was three revolutions, Russian revolutions, 1905 and then two in 1917. Whether I finish it, I don't know, but I'd love to, so definitely that one. 5. What book are you saving for retirement? None, because I don't intend to retire. They're going to drag me out screaming. I'm 60 now. Perhaps I should be making plans for retirement, but no. 6. Last page. Read it first or wait till the end. It's the journey, not the destination. So I'll read it at the end. Although, like I've said before, when I was in the Navy, I got to the end and some swine ripped out the last 2 pages. Which is funny. But no, I believe when it comes to reading, you should let the author guide you through the journey that they want to. When it comes to writing, that's different. When I wrote my 2 books, I wrote the last bit first, so I knew where I was ending up. But there you go. And that's the same with every chapter I wrote. 7. Acknowledgement. Waste of paper and ink or interesting aside. Grammaticus, at the time of this recording, has put out a video about the worst forward in any book. So some could be tedious, and I'm assuming that's what is meant. And you're acknowledging people that's helped you, or the author, write. So they're useful. For my first book, I acknowledged my wife. I actually said, a bird never flew on one wing. A bird has never flown on one... If only I could speak English. I'll say that again. A bird has never flown on one wing. In other words, I couldn't have done it without her. So they're heartfelt often. And, I mean, look at this one. Mary Shelley has done an acknowledgement to William Godwin, author of Political Justice, Caleb Williams, etc. These volumes are respectfully inscribed by the author. Well, Godwin was her father, who married Mary Wollstonecraft, and Mary Wollstonecraft died just after giving birth to Mary Shelley. So there's an historical importance to acknowledgements. We may not understand it at the time, but I think they're important and they should be seen as such. Certainly not a waste of time. Although I think the question was waste of paper and ink. 8. Which book character would you switch places with? Without hesitation, Stephen Maturin in the Master and Commander series. Now, you'd assume, being ex-Navy, I would go for Aubrey if you know the films or the books. But I've always been attracted to Stephen Maturin because they're like chalk and cheese. They're two diametrically opposed presences. So Aubrey is tall and he's fantastic at sea but useless on land, whereas Maturin is small, darker features, fantastic on land but useless at sea. Well, I like to think I wasn't useless at sea when I was in the Navy, but there's something about Maturin's character that I think is much more rounded and developed and interesting than Aubrey. He's well learned, he is studious, he's got interests in botany, natural philosophy as they called it then, and obviously spying. So he's just a great... I would swap within him, though I'm not sure I would like the era, because you would give up a lot, and it's bloody dangerous. 9. Do you have a book that reminds you of something specific in your life? Place, time, person. Yes, I do. So, my childhood was difficult. My mother went through a really bad divorce, and I have tended to blank out the first 8 years of my life. And I make no bones of it. It's not something that I've not talked about before. I've probably not talked about it here. But I believed it made me the person I am. Because I, like Ariel, in other words, Percy Bysshe Shelley, I am not equating myself to his writing skills. But he had a very difficult childhood. Very privileged, where mine wasn't necessarily. But very similar. So when I read about his childhood and how he had an outlook on life that nobody else seemed to share, and that he had an interest in, well, for him, protecting women, and he wanted to protect others. And I share a lot with that, more than any other character I've ever come across. And it reminds me of specific moments in my time, especially the way he overcame difficulties, but it didn't make him a bad character. Yeah, Ariel, definitely. So glad I read that book recently, and I've only just read it. I wonder if it would have had the same effect 20 years ago. I don't know. 10. Name a book that you required in an interesting way. I've talked about it before. Yes. Shakespeare, The Complete Works. So, I started this channel, and I found a book that was very dog-eared and very dense text. And I've done the first two Gentlemen of Verona and The Tempest from that book. But I came across this. I went into a thrift store, and this was in the corner. And I looked at it, and Shakespeare looked back at me, and I walked out. And it haunted me. I thought, I should have got that book. And the reason being is because the text is so much bigger. In fact, this one that I've just opened is King John, which I'm going to do next. Went back thinking it had gone. I'd lost my opportunity, but there it was still, and I got it. Have you ever given a book away for a special reason to a special person? Everybody's special. Don't need a reason to give books away to people. Whenever I have read a book, I tend to give it away, in the hope that someone will read it. It's like we have a thing round here, and I think it's a Kiwi thing as well. It's not just a Kiwi, they're everywhere, but we call them opportunity shops here, op shops. Or bespoke shops. So if you've finished wearing something or reading something, give it away. Someone else will benefit from it. And a lot of the books are from thrift shops because people do the same thing. That's why I got the collection of 10 Penguin books. Never thought I'd get these, but someone had donated them to a second-hand store. So I do the same. What's it called? Feed forward? Because other people do it. I've learned that one. That's a good lesson I've learned from people. 12. Which book has been with you most places? Well, it's not a specific book that, as the book itself, I've had the copy of for years, but I've always had this book in various versions, and it's this one. Not the King James, but the Bible. So I'm not religious. I'm an atheist, but I have an abiding interest, probably love, in fact, of old scripture books. So the Tanakh, which is the Old Testament, the Brit Hadishah, which is the New Testament, the Guru Granth Sahib, the Bhagavad Gita, the Tao Te Ching, the Mahabharata, all those. Because although a lot of it is lost in translation, the wisdom of the ancients that they've handed down to us is not something we should cast aside, I believe. It's a perennial... There's perennial truisms that we could study. We don't have to agree with them, but they're useful, I think, for me. I'm only talking about myself now. I find it useful to dip in and out of stuff, and especially the historical aspect of the Bible as well. So, yeah, that one has been with me pretty much all my life. I have a degree in art, design, theology, and philosophy. I taught the subject. And ethics in the UK. I just have an abiding interest in that, in all things scriptural. And many debates have taken place as to why then do I not follow with faith. That'll be for later. Any required reading you hated in high school that wasn't so bad 2 years later? Yeah, Shakespeare. Never got it in school. And I'm not saying it's because of indifferent teachers or whatever. I think I just wasn't ready to receive what Shakespeare teaches us. I wasn't mature enough. I wasn't mature enough in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. It's only recently that I've come to appreciate what we can take from it. And other books similar, but definitely with Shakespeare, because let's not get into the argument now as to whether Shakespeare existed. Even if there wasn't a Shakespeare, we've got a load of work with Shakespeare's name on it. Even if Shakespeare was a woman, does it matter? It's some person put to paper under the pen name Shakespeare, all of this work, whether it's multiple authors or not, that we can collectively say there's something in all of these that we could study and take away from. And whether it's the human emotions or situations, how we deal with prejudice, comedy, anything, so much to take from there. I didn't get that in high school. I certainly didn't get it. I didn't get it 2 years later, and I'm only just getting it now. So, better late than never. 14, used or brand new? Well, I think you can tell I like both. Look at that. It's falling apart. Really interesting. Graham Greene, I've got to really like him. I bought this, but the way I don't murder books, I don't mistreat them, but it's starting to show its age already. Down here, you can see the line. Yeah, I've had the conversation before. You don't get that with this because it's binded better. So either used or brand new. Interesting 15th question. Have you ever read a Dan Brown book? Yeah. The Da Vinci Code. And I think I read Angels and Demons. That's all it is. They don't ask us what we think about Dan Brown or his work, but I've read them. That's actually a topic in itself that's interesting, isn't it? When we say read, do we mean read and then taking in what's being said? Because they're not mutually the same. It's like you look, but you don't see. You touch, but you don't feel. You listen, but you don't hear. You read, but do you understand? Do you take in what is being said? That's different, but that's not asked. 16, have you ever seen a movie you like better than the book? I'm not sure. Somebody please tell me, because I don't know the answer to this. I'm not going to look it up. Alien, did that come first and then a book was done afterwards? I think it was. But there are, even if it's not that one, there are films in which somebody has written a book about it afterwards. So in that respect, the film is better. But if the book comes first, the book is always better than the movie. So I finished 39 Steps. And I've studied the book, but also asking the question about the movie that Hitchcock made and the differences. And I know this has come up recently a lot on YouTube. How is it that you can get a book and then when it's made into whatever adaptation, there's always changes made? They'll introduce new characters. They'll change characters. If the book is good enough to be made into a movie, keep the book as it is, personally. And I understand that in some instances you cannot do certain scenes from books because they're just too expensive to make. That was a great thing about War and Peace. The Russian Bondarchuk 3 film, spectacular, was gifted thousands upon thousands of Soviet-era troops who were all put in Napoleonic-era uniforms, and they reenacted the Battle of Borodino. The cost alone would be too prohibitive now. And they'd go down the route of CGI or cutaways or not showing the full scope of the people in a battle. I understand that. But changing characters that we obviously know from a book, it's an amazing topic to discuss, that one. But I personally think the book is always better than the movie. 17. Have you ever read a book that's made you hungry, cookbooks included? Oh, yeah. And I've done an episode with my grandson, More Brune's Cookbook. And I'm going to do another one for Christmas with him. I love cookbooks, but not necessarily modern ones. There's a book that I had for a long time, Robert May from the 1660s, The Accomplished Cook. And I reference it in a novel I've just finished writing because the language alone is brilliant. They garnish and they dress dishes, and some of the food will be spectacular. There was actually a cookbook that is modern. I've contradicted myself, but it's to do with Master and Commander. And the first 5 books especially have a lot of references to food and recipes. And 2 ladies from America did I think it was called Spotted Dick. What was it called? Yeah, Lobscouse and Spotted Dog. And they are dishes from the books. And I had a copy of it. It's fantastic. The food that was being made back then was sumptuous, absolutely great. So, yeah, I do like cookbooks. 18. Who is the person whose book advice you'll always take? All of you lot. Anyone's listening, either a booktuber or somebody who comments. So, Zoe, I won't say your last name, Zoe, I know what it is, but I won't say it. Zoe, who comments a lot on my channel, and thank you, wonderful, and has recommended certain books, and so has Grammaticus, and so has Philip Hall, and Shawnin. Basically, the great thing about BookTube is that we do recommend. So I'll take on board all of those, every one of them. You're the people whose advice I would take. Absolutely. 19. Is there a book out of your comfort zone? For example, out of your usual reading genre that you ended up loving? Okay, I don't like using the word hate, and I don't really like using the word love because they're subjective words. I enjoy and I respect and I take on books. I wouldn't use the word comfort zone either personally because, all right, okay, look at this. I love military history. This one is spectacular because one, it's from the Germans' point of view. And the shock was after the war that when it was released, many years later, that people who had fought the Germans had been led to believe almost that they're not quite human. But of course they are. Shelling has the same effect on them as anybody. And there's this great scene, well, I won't say it's great, but it's an important scene, a difficult scene, at the beginning where they're being shelled and they have to hide in, effectively, where bodies have been buried, in coffins to save themselves. And when the shelling's over, they come out and this group of young men begin to hear this screaming, and it's the horses. Been terribly injured, they're dying, and one is going round and round and round because it's got a broken back. That's very effective, and it will put anybody out your comfort zone. But then that you shouldn't shy away from that. That's important to know. I remember vividly at school, one of the best lessons I ever had wasn't in school. We was on a school trip, and we went to a working farm, which is about an hour away from the school. And I don't think most kids had ever been to a farm. And they were, I remember some of them being quite discomforted by the way in which battery hens were being kept, as anyone should really. There wasn't free range back then. And the animals. And the farmer tried to explain to us kids, I think we were about 11 or 12 years old, how a cattle is slaughtered and then cut up, butchered and sent to the supermarket. So we see the end product all nicely wrapped and put under purple light to make it look fresher. We take it home, we cook it, but we don't necessarily always link up the way the production of such meat becomes that. And it can be quite disturbing to watch. That would take anyone out of the comfort zone. But to ignore it would be, I think, even worse. You should confront certain things because otherwise turning away from a problem or an issue isn't going to solve any of those things or make the world better. We have to confront certain difficult subjects. Now, if it's for titillation or whatever, then that is an issue. Yeah, certain things I would feel uncomfortable with. The question was, is there a book out of your comfort zone? No, for the reasons I've laid out. Out of a usual reading genre, I don't follow any genre. I'm not interested specifically in just one genre. I think there should be books, taken on their own merits. If you've lasted this long, well done. I'm now to 20 and I've got to tag at least 4 people. So thank you, Travis. Wonderful tag. I hope I've done this justice. The 4 people I've got to tag, I don't know right off at the moment. I'm finding with tags that when I'm tagged and I come to tag others, they may have already been tagged. This is becoming a web. It's difficult to penetrate at times. So I'm going to take time to try and find people that perhaps have never been tagged before. Heather Reed, hello Heather, was very kind enough to point me a tag my way, and she did say the question, Mark hasn't done any tags, yeah, he doesn't want to, or no one's tagged him. So I really appreciated being tagged. So hopefully I'm going to find people who have not been tagged and can be tagged. And on that note, I wonder if it's possible, and I don't know the answer to this, we tend to tag people who are only doing their own channels. But I've noticed there's a handful I could think of commentators, people who make comments, but they don't run a YouTube channel. A couple of them got subscribers, but they don't necessarily produce videos. And I don't know whether it's possible for them to be considered to be tagged if they wanted to write some comments. So I'm going to end it. I will physically tag 4 YouTube BookTube channels. But if you are somebody who doesn't run a channel and you're listening and think, oh, I'd like to answer those questions, please do. Don't make a video. Just write your answers in the comment. So thank you very much. And again, thank you, Travis. Ta-ta for now.